Now, let's bring in Greg Simons, a professor of armed conflicts and journalism at Daffodil University. He joins us live from Dhaka. Very good to have you on the program, sir. You know, as Joel was speaking, we were looking at these old pictures of Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, and Putin handing over, I think it was a football to Donald Trump, or the other way around. You know, obviously these guys have some sort of history between them. What do you think this conversation is going to be like on Friday in Alaska when these two leaders meet?
There is definitely a history between them, but of course it's not always been plain sailing because, I mean, recently, of course, Trump admitted to being the first one to give Ukraine lethal weapons rather than what he called blankets, which were given by Obama. So, I mean, of course, Russia understands that. And I mean, it's American interests to what seems to be to freeze this conflict. It's in Russian interest to end the conflict. So you have some differences already. So I think it's going to be a hard discussion. But the fact that you got the two leaders coming together to discuss this means that a lot of the groundwork has already been laid. But of course, this doesn't guarantee an outcome. This just guarantees perhaps the beginning of the process about resolving some of the underlying issues of the conflict and to damp things down a bit.
The argument regarding the location that we're hearing, this meeting happening in Alaska, is the fact that, you know, Europe, or rather the U.S. actually bought Alaska from Russia back in the 19th century. And the fear is that now Putin's going to go over there and say, you know what, we could sell you Alaska back in the 19th centuries. Why not just agree on letting us have a chunk of Ukraine? Do you think there's a fear, a real fear, that because Zelensky's not in the room, that this is what these two leaders might actually conjure up during this meeting?
I doubt this very much. I mean, those historical points, I mean, Alaska was sold by Imperial Russia in 1867 to the United States at a very cheap price. But that's history. I mean, the main problem, I think, for Trump is that he understands that the Ukraine war, from his perspective, needs to be actually frozen because he has the problem about the rise of China. So his main problem is not geopolitical problem, it's not Russia, but China in terms of weakening and containing China. And from the Russian perspective, I don't think they need to ask American permission, because they're winning on the battlefield. And I think this is one of Trump's concerns, because, I mean, he does love his image and brand, and I don't think he wants to be seen as being the president in the White House at the time when you have an actual acknowledged defeat on the battlefield in Ukraine.
Professor, we heard from Zelensky. He's saying that he's not going to give up the Donbass region because Russia might use it to launch new assaults on Ukraine. And of course, the Europeans are worried that if you give in to the Russian demands of giving up territory to Russia, you're just going to see a repeat of history from the Second World War, where then Russia is going to move on and take even more terrain and possibly even start attacking Europe. Do you think that's a real fear, that if Europe and Ukraine is made to give up territory, we're going to see Russia regrouping and then starting to attack more of Europe?
Well, the problem for Zelensky, he's not winning this war. In fact, the front line is starting to crumble in Ukraine. And this is his fear, because remember the times he was saying he refuses to meet with Putin, but now he's prepared to meet Putin. So there is a measure of desperation. In terms of the threats that Russia wants to go on and conquer territories, such as in the aftermath of the Second World War, I think are unrealistic, but they serve a purpose of trying to unify consensus in Europe to keep this resistance and this war going on. because without fear, there is less resolve. And Europe at the moment is teetering. They don't want to be involved in this war any longer. They want to see it finished. And the European leaders, I mean, they don't really have too much say. And if they had any say, they would have been invited to go to Alaska with Trump and Putin.
Well, at least they're trying to make their voices heard during that conference call today between the European leaders, Donald Trump and Zelensky. We'll see what comes out of that. Professor Simmons, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you.